Hello everyone, and welcome to Anomalous Archive, where we post scary stories to help you sleep. Please comment where you are listening to my videos from, since I believe it would be fun for all of us to know. Also, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's reach 10 subscribers until the end of this month. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. I've always loved flying. Something about being above the clouds, detached from the world, I find incredibly peaceful. So when my sister Catherine suggested visiting our grandparents in Germany, I seized the opportunity. It was a night flight, the kind where you hope to sleep through and wake up in a new place, refreshed and ready to explore. Catherine and I arrived at the airport, buzzing with excitement. We hadn't seen our grandparents in years, and this trip was long overdue. The airport was less crowded than I had expected. The hum of the night flights filled the air with a sense of anticipation. We checked in, passed through security, and found our gate with ease. While we waited, we pulled out a deck of cards and passed the time playing games and talking about what we would do when we arrived. Finally, our flight was called. We lined up, boarding passes in hand, and made our way to the plane. It was a large, wider airplane, its interior bathed in soft ambient light. We found our seats, stowed our carry-on luggage, and made ourselves comfortable for the flight. That's the moment when a flight attendant approached us. Her expression was serious, almost grave. "Good evening," she began, her voice quiet. "Since this is not a standard flight, we have a list of rules that all passengers must follow for their own safety and the safety of others." She handed us a laminated card. It was heavier than I had expected, with a list of 10 rules written in clear, bold letters. Catherine and I exchanged confused glances as the attendant continued distributing the cards to the other passengers. Curiously, I focused on the list. 1. Remain seated with your seatbelt fastened during the flight. 2. Keep the window shade closed until sunrise. 3. Do not speak to people who are not part of your booking. 4. Avoid using electronic devices. Use them only in flight mode and only when absolutely necessary. 5. Do not ask the flight crew any questions about the flight duration or the destination. 6. If you hear unusual noises, remain calm and do not investigate them. 7. Do not accept food or drinks that are not provided directly by the flight attendants. 8. Avoid using the restrooms between 2 a.m. and 3:30 a.m. 9. If someone asks you to change seats, politely but firmly decline. 10. Under no circumstances should you open the emergency exits. Catherine was reading over my shoulder, her forehead unfurled. "This must be some kind of joke," she whispered, a hint of laughter in her voice. I laughed, agreeing with her. "Yes, it's like we're on a flight to the Twilight Zone." The flight attendants demonstrated the safety procedures, but my attention was caught up in the list. It felt like a set of rules you give to someone going into a haunted house, not someone boarding a plane to Germany. As the plane took off, the reality of our adventure became palpable. I leaned back, trying to relax. My eyes closed, but curiosity gnawed at me. Why such bizarre rules? Were they really just a prank by the airline to get some attention on social media? Unable to resist, I whispered to Catherine, "Say, do you think something strange would happen if I opened the window flap?" She shot me a glance, half amused and half worried. "Are you crazy? Don't even think about it. We shouldn't be the ones to find out." Despite her warning, the temptation was too strong. When Catherine fell asleep, I felt drawn to the window latch. My hand moved towards the window. The airplane was quiet. Most passengers were asleep or lost in their thoughts. I told myself I would just take a quick look to prove that it was all just a silly joke. Slowly, I lifted the lid, expecting to see the starry sky or the soft glow of the moon on the clouds. But instead, I was left breathless. Beneath us was not the familiar landscape of cities and oceans in the moonlight, but an expansive, twisted, and grotesque land where shadows moved with malicious intent, and the very air seemed to writhe in agony. I gasped, my heart raced. That was not possible. We were supposed to fly over the Atlantic, not over this nightmare. I tried to rationalize what I saw, to convince myself it was just a trick of the light or my imagination running wild. But the deeper I looked, the more I saw figures, not quite human, wandering through this hellish landscape, their eyes glowing with hunger and malice. Panic set in, and I quickly closed the hatch. My body trembled. I looked around, half expecting that the cabin would have changed. But everything was as it should be. Catherine slept peacefully next to me, and the other passengers remained undisturbed. I sat there, struggling to process what I had seen. The serious expression of the flight attendants suddenly made sense. That was no joke. These rules were a warning, and I had foolishly ignored them. I had subjected myself to that. And more importantly, what consequences awaited us now that I had witnessed the unspeakable? The rest of the flight was a terrifying stretch of time. I knew I had to stay vigilant to protect Catherine and myself from whatever might come next. But as the hours passed, one question tormented me more than all the others. Where were we really flying to, and what awaited us upon landing? The silence of the cabin felt suffocating. Each minute stretched into an eternity. As I sat there, paralyzed with fear and confusion, Catherine stirred beside me. Her eyes fluttered open. She glanced at me and then at the window flap, which was now firmly closed. "Did you?" she began, her voice still hoarse from sleep. I nodded, unable to form the words. My mind was a whirlwind of fear and disbelief. Catherine's eyes widened as she read the truth in my expression. "What did you see?" she whispered, her curiosity laced with concern. I hesitated, unwilling to frighten her further. "It's hard to explain. It was not normal. I just shouldn't have looked." Catherine sat up straight, her worry growing. "We need to stay calm. Maybe you were only half asleep, and it was just a dream." I wish I could believe that. The terror I felt, the eerie clarity of what I saw, it was all too real. Before I could respond, a disturbance further up caught our attention. A passenger, a man in his mid-30s, stood in the aisle. His body language was tense, agitated. "I need to get out of this plane," he shouted, his voice filled with panic. The flight attendants hurried to him, their faces masks of professional calm. "Sir, please return to your seat. We are in the middle of the flight. There is no place for you to get off." No, you don't understand. That's not right. None of this is right," he insisted, his eyes darting around as if searching for a way out. Catherine and I watched in shock as the man was gently but firmly escorted back to his seat. The flight attendants reassured the other passengers, their practiced smiles not reaching their eyes. "It was just a minor disturbance," one of them announced. "Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened." As the cabin settled, the weight of the flight attendants' earlier warnings bore heavily on me. The rules were not just arbitrary instructions. They were safeguards against something that went far beyond normal conditions. Catherine grabbed my hand, her grip firm. "We should follow the rules, no matter how strange they seem," she said. I nodded, accepting the reality of our situation. We were in this together, and breaking the rules had consequences that I was just beginning to understand. The hours that followed were filled with fear and discomfort. I couldn't shake the image of the hellish landscape, nor could I ignore the growing feeling of being watched. It felt as if the air around us had changed, charged with a malignant presence. At some point, I dared to use the toilet. My movements were quick and purposeful, always mindful of the rule not to use it at certain times. The cabin felt colder as I moved. The shadows seemed deeper. I kept my head down, avoiding interacting with other passengers. The rule of not speaking to anyone outside our booking echoed in my head. Back at my seat, I found Catherine asleep, her face peaceful in slumber. I envied her ability to find peace amidst the chaos. In that moment, I tried to relax as well, to close my eyes and lose myself in sleep. But every sound, every movement of the plane made me startle. Then it happened. A gentle tapping like fingertips against the window shutter beside me. My breath caught. The memory of the rule flashed in my mind. Under no circumstances should you open the emergency exits. But that was different, wasn't it? Just a knock at the window. Curiously, I fought against the fear. The knocking persisted, insistent, almost pleading. Against my better judgment, I felt drawn to the latch. My hand trembled as I reached for it. "Please don't," hissed a voice, startling me. I turned around and found a flight attendant standing next to our row. Her eyes were wide open with fear. "You must not open that. Please follow the rules." Her seriousness, the raw fear in her voice, anchored me back to reality. I nodded and pulled my hand back as if it had been burned. The knocking stopped, replaced by an oppressive silence that enveloped us. The flight attendant gave me a brief nod. Her expression softened slightly. "Thank you," she whispered before moving on, her steps silent on the cabin floor. I sat there, my heart pounding, the weight of our situation pressing down on me. Catherine stirred, awakening once more. Her eyes met mine. "What's wrong?" she murmured, sensing my fear. Nothing, just a nightmare," I lied, the word bitter on my tongue. As the night progressed, the oppressive atmosphere in the cabin grew, a tangible sign that stifled any semblance of normality. The flight continued on its way, a slow march through the unknown. The tension in the cabin had thickened to a palpable density, enveloping each of us in a cloak of unease. Catherine, now fully awake, held my hand with a strength born of fear. The darkness outside seemed to press against the windows, an unyielding force seeking entry into our fragile refuge. "Something is not right," Catherine whispered, her voice a fragile thread in the oppressive silence. "It's as if we're not just flying through space, but through something else." I nodded, unable to articulate the fear that had taken root in my soul. The flight attendants moved through the cabin, their faces shaped into masks of calm as they checked on the passengers. Then, without warning, the plane began to descend. Not the gentle, calculated descent onto a runway, but a sharp, stomach-churning drop that sent a wave of panic through the cabin. Screams filled the air, mingling with the sound of objects being thrown from their places. The airplane groaned as if in pain. "Buckle up," ordered a flight attendant, her voice strong despite the chaos. "Stay calm." Catherine and I obeyed, our hands entwined, as the plane continued its steep descent. I closed my eyes, prayed for deliverance. Suddenly, the descent slowed. The plane stabilized as if caught by an invisible hand. The relief was only short-lived. A deep, rumbling noise filled the cabin, a sound that no engine or storm could produce. It was as if the air itself vibrated with the resonance of something ancient, something malevolent. Catherine squeezed my hand tighter, her eyes wide open in fear. "What is that noise?" she whispered. I shook my head, too scared to voice my thoughts. The rules were a warning, a guide to protect us from the invisible horrors lurking beyond the thin veil of reality we had broken through. By looking outside, by breaking the rules, I had invited something in. The rumbling grew louder, more insistent, until it was all we could hear. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, it stopped. The silence that followed was oppressive, a harbinger of something imminent and terrible. The captain's voice crackled over the intercom, the first time we had heard him since takeoff. "Dear passengers, please remain calm. We have encountered unexpected conditions, but we are making adjustments and continuing our journey." His words were meant to reassure, but they fell flat. a hollow promise in the face of the unknown. Catherine and I exchanged a glance, a mutual understanding that what we were facing was far from normal. As we sat, clinging to each other, our eyes fixed straight ahead, one question tormented me more than any other. Where were we really on the journey, and what awaited us upon landing? In the eerie silence that followed, time became a stretchable concept, expanding and contracting with the ebb and flow of our collective fear. Catherine and I, bound by fear and the unspoken agreement to face the unknown together, watched as the shadows of the flight attendants' flashlights danced across the cabin walls, creating grotesque shapes that seemed almost alive. Whispers filled the air, a cacophony of fear and speculation mingling with the sound of the plane snapping through the invisible sky. The rules, those 10 commandments that seemed so curious at first, weighed heavily on my mind. Each seemed to point to a truth that was too immense and terrifying to comprehend. As if conjuring our collective anxiety, the captain's voice echoed once more over the intercom, a beacon of authority in the darkness. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain. I understand that you have concerns, and I appreciate your cooperation and adherence to the flight crew's instructions. We are navigating through unusual conditions, but I assure you, we are on course and will reach our destination as planned. Please remain seated and have your seatbelts fastened. His message, intended as reassurance, only served to deepen the mystery. What unusual conditions could justify such a deviation from the norm, and what destination awaited us? Wrapped in the careful wording of the captain, the cabin remained shrouded in darkness. The flight attendants' flashlights were now the only source of light, their beams cutting through the darkness as if guiding ships through stormy seas. But despite the darkness, a sense of unity began to emerge among the passengers. We were no longer just fellow travelers. We were explorers on the brink of discovery, each of us marked by the experience of witnessing realities beyond our understanding. A sudden change in the movement of the airplane drew our attention forward. We descended, not into a landing in the traditional sense, but into a new phase of our journey. The light points became brighter, larger, and revealed themselves not as mere spots of luminosity, but as gates, portals pulsing with energy. The descent felt eternal, a slow immersion into a realm that existed on the edge of imagination. The rules echoed in my head, a mantra that calmed my nerves. Stay calm, follow the instructions, trust in the journey. As we approached one of the portals, the boundary between our world and the next blurred. The aircraft was enveloped in light, a brilliance that did not dazzle but embraced, a warmth that was both strange and familiar. The transition was seamless, a passage through the portal that felt like a gentle exhale, a release of breath we didn't know we had been holding. On the other side, the light receded, revealing a landscape that words could not capture. It was a world, alive with colors without names, landscapes that defied logic, and skies that told stories in the language of dreams. In that moment, suspended between worlds, a profound realization blossomed within us. Our journey was not merely a physical crossing, but an exploration, a challenge to our understanding of reality and our place within it. Catherine and I, hand in hand, stood facing the window. Our reflections blended with the view of the world beyond. This journey, with its rules and mysteries, had changed us. The layers of the mundane had been stripped away to reveal the core of our curiosity, our unwavering desire to understand the unknown. As the plane continued its flight through this new realm, a feeling of peace enveloped me. The fear and uncertainty that had once seized my heart had given way to my acceptance of the infinite possibilities that lie beyond the boundaries of our understanding. We were travelers on the greatest adventure of our lives, witnesses to wonders that defied description. And although the destination remained unknown, one thing was clear. We were no longer the people who had boarded that plane. We had traversed the unknown and had entered a new existence, forever changed by the journey. In the unfolding silence, a contemplative stillness that enveloped the cabin as each of us grasped the enormity of our experience, the airplane seemed to hum with a deeper resonance, as if it too had crossed the threshold and become part of the vastness of the unknown stretching beyond the windows. Catherine and I, along with every soul on board, were trapped in a state of suspended silence, our eyes wide open to the impossibilities unfolding before us. A subtle change in the atmosphere of the cabin diverted our attention from the hypnotic landscape. The air grew colder, a palpable shift that sent a shiver through the passengers. It was as if the essence of this place, with its alien laws and spectral beauties, was penetrating the airplane, marking us as more than mere observers. We were participants in an unfathomable process. The flight attendants, a pillar of calm amidst the chaos, now moved with a purpose that seemed almost ceremonial. They inspected each row with a thoroughness that went beyond safety protocols, ensuring that every passenger was seated and every window was open to witness the world outside. Their actions, once perceived as routine, now feel like part of a ritual, a preparation for what is to come. Catherine squeezes my hand. Her presence is a constant source of comfort. "Look," she whispers, nodding towards the front cabin. The captain has stepped out of the cockpit, his appearance among us a rarity that underscores the gravity of our situation. He stood solemnly before us, his gaze sweeping through the cabin with an intensity that demanded attention. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice firm, "we have reached a phase of our journey that requires your utmost attention and cooperation. The rules that have been given to you are now more important than ever. Please adhere to them, for your own safety and the safety of everyone on board." His announcement, though calm, intensified the surreal nature of our flight. The captain's presence among us, addressing us not as passengers but as travelers on an unprecedented expedition, cemented our transition from the ordinary to the extraordinary. As he returned to the cockpit, a murmur of unease spread through the cabin. The flight attendants resumed their positions, their faces calm, as if they were guardians guiding us through this passage. The landscape outside is transformed once again. The impossible geometries and pulsating structures had given way to vast, open spaces that stretch into infinity, speckled with points of light that resemble neither stars nor any celestial body we know. In this moment of collective awe, a sense of unity binds us. We are no longer strangers on a plane. The final leg of our journey unfolded in silence, a contemplative stillness that envelopes the cabin as each of us grapples with the enormity of our experience. The world outside the windows had transformed into a peaceful landscape, seeming to exist in harmony with the cosmos itself. A place of peace and unimaginable beauty, standing in stark contrast to the chaotic realms we had traversed. Catherine and I sat hand in hand. Our previous conversations about what awaited us at our destination now seemed insignificant. We had set out as tourists, eager for the warmth of family gatherings and the comfort of familiar landscapes. Now we are pilgrims on the threshold of a new reality, changed in ways we are just beginning to understand. The gentle continuation of the plane's descent, the feeling of landing, is unmistakably real this time. The cabin is filled with a sense of anticipation, a collective holding of breath as we approach the moment of truth. The cabin doors open, and we are invited to disembark, not into the familiar surroundings of an airport, but onto the platform of a train station that seems to balance on the border between dream and reality. The air is fresh, filled with the scent of unknown flowers, and the sky above us is a tapestry of colors that no earthly sunset could reproduce. We step outside, Our feet touch a ground that appears both solid and ethereal, a place that dreams of the laws of physics as we know them. Catherine and I exchange a glance, a silent question in our eyes. Are we still in our world, or have we crossed into another? The landscape around us is breathtaking, a harmonious blend of nature and architecture that suggests an advanced civilization living in harmony with its surroundings. The passengers, our fellow travelers, begin to disperse, each of us being drawn in different directions by invisible forces, or perhaps by an intuition we cannot yet comprehend. There is no more fear now, only a deep sense of purpose, as if the completion of this journey has set each of us on a path that was always meant for us. Catherine squeezes my hand tighter. Her smile radiates with excitement that she can hardly conceal. Wherever we are, she says, "It's beautiful." I nod, unable to find the words to express the mix of awe and serenity that fills me. We move forward, together into this new world, ready to embrace whatever comes next. And as we delve into this new world, a place that is both strange and familiar, a voice in the back of my mind once again shares, a remnant of the flight that brought us here. We never left the plane.